I think a lot of Asian people just have a different view of jail than what it actually may do.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested in just even one of those like Jubilee videos where you just have a whole bunch of people in a row just talking with each other. just gather like 5 Asian people and have them sit in a semicircle and just talk about their view on, does jail make you better or worse and stuff like that.
Nah, see, but the thing is like I would actually watch that video. Like
I
that's
would too. Like I do want to see this. Like I genuinely want to see this.
I don't want to see, because Jubilee is like Asian founded, I'm pretty sure. And like, I don't want to see another Jubilee video of like, should gay people have rights? I don't want to see another video like that. Welcome to the Politically Asian podcast. We're just 2 Asian American comedians talking about politics and the Asian American community in hopes of getting more Asians to talk about politics. We are coming at you live from Brooklyn, New York. My name is Jerry Lim. My pronouns are they, them, and you can find me across the internet at Jerryaki. That's Gerrieyaki. And my co-host.
Hey, my name is Aaron Yin. My pronouns are he, him, and you can find me on social media at Aaron Flarin. That's AARONFLARIN.
All right. Well, we're going to open up this episode with our segment, Practice What You Preach. If this is your first time listening to the pod, this is where, we typically talk about politics, but it's also important to do things. So each week we share one thing we did related to politics and organizing. This week I'll go first. I went to a DSA 101 meeting. Finally. Finally, I made it out there. It was on a weekend this time, which is why I could do it, because there's just something about going to a meeting after work that's just like, no, I don't want to do that.
How was it?
So it was really interesting. Like, I think like net neutral.
Okay.
So it was a packed house. It was like a little building, or a little, what's it called, space in the Lower East Side. And they had a slideshow. Like they had to do a little presentation just to explain the complexity of DSA, which was like kind of like, I will say it was exactly what I thought it was in terms of like red tape. And I do think that's where many of the criticisms come from for DSA, which is like, how do you have thousands of members and still not get, like too much
anything done? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to give them a little credit. I won't say they won't get anything done, but like, yeah. But yeah, it was very theoretical and focused. I feel like it focused a lot on electoral politics and then specifically statewide politics. Like I even asked, I was like, oh, so like what's being done about municipal, like for New York City? And I was told that the committee for that was like typically smaller. There's less, focus there. And I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's always weird to me because like when you're trying to do stuff at the state level, like state officials, they go to Albany and maybe like a few times a year, maybe even twice a year. So you're just really trying to urge them to do one vote on one thing. It feels a little... it feels a little relaxed and lower effort. Yeah, that's interesting. When you say it was a packed house, like how many people were inside? Oh,
it was a lot. Like it was to the point, it was like standing room only by the time they started the
50?
40
60?
to 50 people,
Okay,
I would say. Incredibly, only like 5 of us wore masks. Awesome.
Okay.
But they had the windows and doors open. So like some points, I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from DSA. I think like, if you're looking for a place to be surrounded by leftist people, it might be good. It did give social club vibes. But I want to give it a couple more meetings before I like completely start like criticizing them, like and decrying them,
Yeah. And what kind of people showed up to the intro meeting? Like out of these 40, 50?
Aaron, are you asking about were they mostly white people?
That, but also, it's like that, like, age, gender, anything else like that.
For gender, I would say, uh, I felt like it was pretty diverse gender wise. I mean, like I didn't really stick around to socialize with people, so there could have been like some non-binary folks that like I just, didn't get to meet or anything like that. But in terms of like diversity, I would say it was predominantly white. I will give it that. And then I would say like 80-20. And then like of the 20%, I would say it was pretty. I think I saw black folks and Asian folks that were there. So yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, yeah, no, good on you for trying. I'm completely not interested in that at all. Just from the few times I've had to, interact or work with some of them in like a limited capacity. So I'm like, but I don't want to make you jaded. So
not yet.
Good on you.
Yeah. I think like the other thing that I was like kind of about was like, I'm kind of interested to know like how they work with like the community, you know what I mean? Like I get that they have like there's like a little community of like leftist DSA people, but like I just want to know like like I said it's in the Lower East Side, but like it's fairly close to Chinatown, and like
oh really?
Yeah, like it's on Jefferson Street, so like it's like a rock a rock's throw, skipping away, whatever. It's close, and I'm just like how are you working with like people in Chinatown? Like, are you working with XYZ? And then like, we talk a lot about unions on the pod. They work with a lot of unions, but they also work with like SEIU, which,
bad, very bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So
all great questions. When's the next meeting?
So I let's see. I'm not going to the citywide one. So that was like for the I think chapter. I'm still like catching up on the terminology because there's like so many designations of like chapter, branch, working group, committee, blah,
this
blah,
sounds
blah.
like a headache already.
Right. I was just
this is just the Democratic Party right here.
Right. I don't know, but I will be going to, or I don't know when the next 101 meeting is, but they said it's good to go to like your more localized branch meeting. So that's next on my agenda. We'll report back. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. What about you?
On my end, so as you all know, I've been part of this picket line in front of the Museum of Chinese in America for over a year now. And something new that we're doing right now is working with a lot of the Columbia and NYU students on the picket line.
The grad student union?
No, like actual students who just come to our picket line. Yeah, they're not.
Nice.
Like they come to the picket line, and we're working with them to call out more of the professors at Columbia and NYU who are still supporting MoCA, even after all the drama for like the past 2 years. These are professors who, they're like, oh, we're experts in like Chinese history and Chinese culture and Asian immigrant stuff, right? Like,
and they're crusties. Are they crusties?
No. They're actually, well, one of them's white, one of them's Asian. They're both just like, in their like 70s, which I think might reflect like their politics around identity. It's like, oh, yeah, this is a museum for Asian people. We will not criticize this institution no matter how bad it gets, because they see the value of that, which is, I think, problematic in my opinion. But yeah, so we're just doing some like initial postering and flyering and trying to get more students involved, but also just call these professors out who are like, like they say they're progressive and quote progressive, right? But then they have just like terrible stances on like this kind of issue.
Right. Okay, cool. So, I guess like, how did you get how did they hear about y'all? Like, how did the students like come to the picket?
Yeah, I think they heard about it. Well, I think one of them heard about it through like Youth Against Displacement's Instagram, maybe. Like a couple of people hear about it through that. And then we also like gave some talks at like NYU before. This was before my time, but like people from YAD who knew NYU professors, these professors allowed them to speak at the university about issues of Chinatown and displacement. And then some students heard about it through there and like came afterward, which is, I think, pretty cool.
Yeah. So these are like undergrad students, like young people.
Yeah. These are like, just, like literally just undergrads.
Okay. I mean, it's cool to see young people always get involved in like that kind of thing too.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty early, just making some posters, coming up with like a plan to flyer, that kind of thing.
Neat. Okay. I guess like I think it's like kind of funny that like the NYU professors like invited them and then like now it's like calling out professors at the same time.
Yeah, I mean it's different groups of professors, right?
I see.
Like there are
Okay.
some professors who are like very, they kind of understand what's going on. It's like, yeah, Mocha should not be receiving any money related to the jail in Chinatown. And then there are other professors who are like, no, Mocha is a great
Pro Mocha.
institution.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like we'll defend it no matter how problematic it is, right? It's like they pick the hill to die on, you know?
I see. I see. See, but like what's interesting is like these are the youths, right? Like they if they found it through Instagram, I just like we have to get on social media, like protesting and organizing and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Grassroots movements, they just got to keep up. Like it's time to
Yeah.
bring it to TikTok, you know?
Yeah, no, but like actually though, I think it really is important, especially for like Chinatown issues, which most people, like the news may not cover it as broadly as like I don't know, even the hurricane going on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that wraps up our Practice What You Preach segment. Let's get into the news. This week in Asian American news, we're starting off with our first topic. Lawmakers introduce a bill to end deportation of Southeast Asian refugees. This is a bill at the national level, which would prevent the Department of Homeland Security from retaining or deporting refugees who arrived prior to 2008. It would end in-person check-ins with ICE and authorize permanent employment eligibility for those with final orders of removal. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is great. I mean, I think last week we talked about some California specific bills to try to end deportation that did not pass.
Yeah.
So it's great to see, people trying to tackle this from multiple angles. It's again someone from California proposing this, named Alan Lowenthal, California's, I guess, District 37, District 47. But no, I think it's a great attempt to, try to end this issue from multiple angles, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how it goes. It's like really early stages right now. There's not even a number for the bill yet.
It's interesting that it wasn't even brought up by like an Asian person, I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I mean, to be fair, I mean, there are some Asian people co-leading it. I guess Judy Chu, Pramila Jayapal.
Okay. I thought it was just like this Lowenthal guy like just coming in. I was like, oh, all right.
White man's savior, white man's burden.
Right.
Yeah, we are ignoring the fact that Judy Chu was also on that list
of inside traders. There we go.
Inside traders.
Yeah. It's fine. I guess like I'm not mad about you inside stock trading or whatever if you're, willing to not deport Southeast Asian refugees.
Yeah, what a scenario where we have to put those against each other. Under the scales of justice or something like that. Yeah, I mean, there were some nice little quotes here. One was saying how this legislation would be a nice way for America to, be accountable for all the trauma that it caused during, like, the Vietnam War, the secret war in Laos, most bombed country per capita. A lot of people literally came to the U.S. because of America's, destructive stuff in the war. So I thought that was nice because, like, prior to 2008 is a really long time. Like, that pretty much covers everyone, I feel like.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you know why it's 2008?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Like, the wars ended in like the 70s. I'm like, maybe extend it to like the 90s, but 2008, it's like, that's cool. I'm not complaining.
I'm not complaining either. There's got to be a reason, Like,
yeah.
I'll maybe we can read the bill and update. But anyway, I thought that was a really good quote. The idea of like it being, responsible for these Southeast Asian refugees. Like, it really is the bare minimum. Is like, don't kick them out.
Yeah.
I just think the U.S. doesn't really want to do anything with these Southeast Asian. Like, it doesn't want to have to do anything with these Southeast Asian refugees because it would mean admitting they lost and fucked up in that region. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. No, it's a lot of people. Well, it's saying, this bill roughly is going to help at least 15,000 Southeast Asian refugees. About 80% of those were convicted of a crime and already completed their sentence. And like in this case, crime is really broad, from like credit card fraud or like one-time theft or something, right? So all the way to murder. So it's pretty broad. But the whole idea of just like not punish them twice for the same one crime. But yeah, I think I'm looking forward to this. It's still pretty early stages. I would say a quick little shout out. One account to follow is definitely CIRAC, the Southeast Asian Resource Action Center. They're pretty involved in this stuff in DC. So yeah, definitely check them out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wrote a note here. I wrote a note here and I was like, I didn't realize Congress could make bills that like target a specific ethnic / racial group. And then I was like, no, they definitely did that, because I was like, the whole Chinese Exclusion Act. I'm surprised that they still do that, or they can still do that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, that and the whole the COVID Hate Crimes Act. You know.
Oh yeah.
I guess that wasn't. I guess it. I mean, no. I would say it was, Asian specific, right? It was broadly speaking, but yeah, that's funny. The Chinese.
Like I just forgot. I was like, I didn't know Congress could do that. Like that feels unconstitutional, but I guess not.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
All right, let's move on to the next piece of news. So this past week, New York Magazine published a series of articles on, I'd broadly say like the Asian American experience over the past 2 years related to Stop Asian Hate and protests. And there's a lot of different profiles and articles. So I guess we'll start by talking about the main one first. The title of this piece is How to Hit Back: The Desperate, Confused, Righteous Campaign to Stop Asian Hate. Jerry, what's one thought you had on this piece?
Oh God, one thought that I had about this article was that I thought it was interesting that they interviewed the landlord and his comment about a hate crime, where he confronted a vandal who was defacing his building, and the vandal called him a chink and then pepper sprayed him, and he called that a hate crime, which is that's not a hate crime. And I feel like everyone just because someone calls you a slur doesn't make it an automatic hate crime,
Yeah, this is the landlord of Christina Yuna Lee, which I thought was interesting to profile.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, he also, I think the more important part is that after he was called a slur, he ran after this guy, who I think is unhoused, and then he tased him.
He tased him. Yeah,
he tased him. I'm like,
he tased him in the back of the neck. I was like, whoa.
I'm like, okay, I feel a little less sympathetic because if that whole interaction happened, or now that whole thing happened, it's like, dude, the other guy doesn't have a house.
And you're a landlord.
and you're a landlord, and then you're tasing him Yeah, I mean, I think it was an interesting person to pick to essentially profile for at least a good half of the piece, because I think he kind of represents this a crowd of Asian Americans who want just more punishment for any of the crimes and attacks done. Even though most of the times the penalty is not that heavy for putting a hate crime status on it. There's this one section talking about bail reform, and they want everyone who was accused of doing a hate crime to serve one more night in prison during pre-trial.
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess they're not on the streets for one more day, but it's a very band-aid solution, right? So yeah.
I think in the article it talked about the importance of calling it a hate crime correctly designating things as hate crimes, because it was just important to recognize that it's important for the government, I guess, the criminal justice system to recognize that these attacks are happening.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, recognize it for them, but also for the victims, right?
Yeah.
I think we talked about last time. It's if you want to label something a hate crime, it's sure, but maybe there's some other way of supporting the victims that doesn't involve a band-aid solution for just sticking the perpetrator in jail for one more night that would arguably just make them worse.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think on the past couple of years, and I feel by the time a crime has been committed, anything is too late. Like there's nothing that in terms of like when we're at that point, I think it's too late to like offer the victim or their victim's family like anything that would make this situation better. Yeah, I thought another thing I thought was interesting was like it sounded like the landlord is pro cop, but like when he called the cops to like catch the vandal, they like failed to catch him, and I was just like, and he's still pro police. Like I don't.
Yeah. Wait, that's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I feel it's always hard to talk about this because like it's so easy to like say like, yeah, like support the homeless and like be anti-police and all that stuff. But I can't confidently say that like if something like, bad happened to me, I can't say that like I wouldn't want vengeance,
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you mentioned this article is for like office workers, tech people, blah blah blah, and like I did think like what the landlord used this phrase that I was just like, nah, that's good. I don't care if like he's conservative. It's a good phrase. He called people limousine liberals who do not have any experience with what we've been dealing with, and I was like, damn. So close to class consciousness, yet like like landlord so far.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I think that's really interesting because, well, I feel like it does depend a little bit on the person you're asking as well. Because like one thing that I thought was interesting in this article is they interviewed this like 67-year-old Vietnamese lady who she was hit. A man like punched her a few times, and then later on they asked her like, oh, do you want to press charges or do you want to do something lighter? And she's actually like, I didn't want him to go to jail, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, so I think it's definitely depends on the person, but I was like, wow, I did not expect that kind of take.
I mean, I could see it, right? Like when we talk about Southeast Asians and like the correlation between poverty and incarceration, right? Maybe like she's had someone in her life who's like experienced the criminal justice system, and she knows like, oh, if like this guy goes to jail, he's probably not going to get the help he needs.
Yeah,
maybe it's something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think there was like a part in that article that was like talking about towards the end where the author was talking about like the hashtag Stop Asian Hate, and like someone was like, shouldn't be like Stop Hating Asians or something like that. And we don't do hot take hot pot anymore, but if we did, this would be my hot take. I want Stop Asian Hate to be synonymous with carceral solutions, so it's like more clear where people stand and who I should avoid.
Yeah, I think one thing that like we kind of need to move the needle on in general is that like putting someone in jail will not make them better.
Yeah.
Like I think that's like a thing that we've kind of talked about over a few times. Like I think right now everyone's like, okay, let's put him off the streets. He won't be bothering people for like 10 to 15 years, right? But then after this person's released, the same thing might happen. And it's like we're just delaying the cycle, and he might come out way worse, more mental health issues, more violent. You know, I don't know. There's separate notes of like COVID spreading rampantly in prison, so then we're like mass killing people in jail. It's not a good place to rehabilitate or address the solution long term. But I think it's really hard to tell that to anyone, especially when it's like, yo, I just got punched. I don't need a lecture about whether jail is good or, which is really valid. Like I think that's completely valid. But I think somehow that's like the perspective that's like not there. And I'd be interested in reading more stuff that like tries to address that.
That's really interesting. I would say like, you know why is because like I shouldn't say you know why. In my opinion, I think the reason that's the case is because, and I'm probably generalizing, but whatever. I don't think like Asian folks really care if someone gets like, a criminal gets better, reforms. You know what I mean? Like, I think the idea that's powering Asian Americans to move for carceral punishment is more of like, let's lock this guy up so he doesn't do more bad stuff, or he doesn't, he can't do this again, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I kind of like think, I hate like playing the cultural card, but like I do wonder if it is cultural in the sense of like, I don't know if you felt like this growing up, but for me, I felt like if I ever made a mistake, like a big mistake in my life, that's it. Game over. Like there's, it's like a permanent kind of like thing, and I can't change that or the effects of that, Yeah,
a little bit of, like, first generation immigrants in America, the standards are higher for us, less chance for messing up, that type of vibe.
Yeah, like, but more on like the sense of like, this mistake is who I am, and like I can't change from that. And I wonder if like that's kind of, the even subconscious that's powering the move for carceral. Lock this guy up. I never want to see them again.
Maybe. Yeah. I think a lot of Asian people just have a different view of jail than what it actually may do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'd be really interested in just even one of those like Jubilee videos where you just have a whole bunch of people in a row just talking with each other. just gather like 5 Asian people and have them sit in a semicircle and just talk about their view on, does jail make you better or worse and stuff like that.
Nah, see, but the thing is like I would actually watch that video. Like
I would too. Like I do want to see this. Like I genuinely want to see this.
I don't want to see, because Jubilee is like Asian founded, I'm pretty sure, and like I don't.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't want to see another Jubilee video of like, should gay people have rights? I don't want to see another video like that. Hey, thanks for listening to the episode so far. If you like it, maybe pause right here and give us 5 stars on either Apple or Spotify. It really helps the pod out, and it's free. But if you have some money to toss our way, consider subscribing to our Patreon. We're currently fundraising to get transcripts for our podcast episodes to make them more accessible, hire a video editor, and hopefully get Canva Premium to deliver better memes. So yeah, thanks for listening, and now back to the episode. I want to see like 5 Asian people discussing like their views on carceral punishment and like, collaborating. Yeah,
because I'm like, okay, sure. Like I understand the perspective that, there's this guy, you lock him up, you get him off the streets permanently. But like behind that guy is like at least another guy, right? And like 10 other guys behind him. It's just Russian, like the system, societies, whatever. Like it's set up to right now to not to take care of people and produce more people who might be committing these crimes in the future, right? So I think that too is kind of missing. It's not like he's the final boss of hate crimes, right? and you lock him up and we're saved forever. It's not. There's like a ton of other people.
Nintendo is the worst thing to ever happen to Asian Americans. Man. I think overall I did think it was it gave me similar vibes to that the article we've discussed previously, like from The Nation. I think the one where that kind of talked about like the state of Asian American politics. And I did like that it closed on a shout out to the Zhongzi vendor.
Oh yeah, the Zhongzi lady. Yeah. We were talking about earlier, I think it's cool at least that there are more Asian Americans who kind of recognize that like maybe police aren't the answer, or like police can harass Asian people, and like if you're anti-cop, like I understand that, but I think right now the key thing is actually jail specifically, right? It's like we're maybe a little more progressive on whether police will help you or not, but in terms of jail, I think that's still the last one that's not touched on.
Really? You think so? I feel like jail and cops go hand in hand, like I almost say like they're synonymous.
Yeah, well, this actually, okay, to be honest, this person in the article did not say their stance on jail. They interviewed the guy who started Dragon Combat Club, and he said, if you're anti-cop, I understand where you're coming from. There are many valid reasons. But he didn't say anything about jail, so
that's true.
I'm not sure if he was, saying the two are the same thing, or if he's pro-jail and anti-cop or something,
Nah, I get the sense that he wasn't. Like, he was very much like, kill them before they go to jail. But that's just the vibe I got.
That's different, yeah.
Because, he has like his shirt, which, like, I don't know if I agree with it, but it does sound badass, which is his sleeve said, violent problems require violent solutions. Become the solution. I was like, okay, I don't know if I agree, but that's like hella badass. I will say that.
This is some Netflix The Punisher stuff. Like, it's like, we don't need jail because we will personally kill all the people beforehand. That's
exactly.
But yeah, I think there is some distinctions between like cop and jail right now, at least among Asian Americans. But again, that Jubilee video, we need that Jubilee video.
We'll make the Jubilee video. So donate to our Patreon and we'll put that
out. I mean, honestly, maybe we'll do it for free. I genuinely think that's a pretty interesting idea.
Okay, and the other article that we wanted to talk about in the New York Mag Asian American issue was the au pair. I like saying nanny more. Au pair is French, and we hate French. But I love this article. I thought it was it was super sad. Like I like, haha, not haha funny, haha weird, like, but it had major, not all skinfolk are kinfolk vibes, like, for sure. And like, it was super interesting. Like, I think like in New York, nannies will always have some of the most interesting stories to tell. 'Cause it's like, it's like working class people intermingling with like the children of like really wealthy people. And then now it was really interesting to read this article because it has like an Asian spin to it. The entire time, all I could think about was like the Crazy Rich Asian scene, like Gemma Chan's house, and like the entire help staff is like Filipino. That's all I was thinking about. What did you think of this article?
Yeah, no, I love this article. I thought this should have been like more of a headliner piece instead of a smaller piece. To me, as someone who does a lot of work with like Asian home care attendants, it really speaks to the fact that like there are many Asian people from 2020 to like 2022 where like the main Asian hate that they knew was actually from other Asian people.
Yeah.
That's the kind of vibe this gave from me. It's like, yo, you're like an Asian nanny being like abused by your Asian household, right? That you're working for. And just there's like 5 or 6 different stories in this thing. I think one I would want to highlight is from Thapa, who's a 45-year-old nanny. And she was working for this, I guess, Indian and white family. And she had been there for 8 years. But right when COVID started, they basically just let go of her like very suddenly. And then she had no more work from her agency. And then she was just unemployed for like over 3 months and just like stressing out a lot because she had no community, no network. It's really different, from immigrant workers as opposed to like, oh, I'm just a young yuppie who can find a job in like a month, right?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that is like really, really, really stressful. And this perspective I think is really great. Because she's like, oh, I'm just here, but there's no work, there's no money, and it's
I found that article like super depressing because my cousin had a yaya, which is like a Filipino nanny. And I forgot how long she lived with my cousin's family, but like she was at least from my perspective, I thought she was like treated pretty well. And like I think like my aunt, like even like they still keep in touch with her even like after she moved back to the Philippines to like live her life or whatever. And like it's just like shitty like to not take care of your own. But I guess like when you're wealthy, you stop seeing that your own aspect,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's truly bad stories of like some host families just kicking out their workers for nights in the cold, and they had to randomly find hostels. I'm like, this sounds very abusive, to be honest.
100%.
Yeah, and I would be, the one thing I wish this article had was like I would actually be interested in hearing these nannies' takes on like the hate crimes and everything that was going on, because like you're dealing with I just think it's like there's this whole Stop Asian Hate thing going on, but you're also literally like being abused by like your Asian employees. So it's like bit of a double thing going on. I think that's much more nuanced than like, okay, here's another article on like a 6-figure earning white collar Asian American who's thinking about crime for the first time in 2020.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I feel like the white collar tech worker who is thinking about race for the first time they have a long way to go before unpacking the not all skinfolk or kinfolk stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's just what it is. And in an age of like, oh, like get clicks for journalism, it's not gonna get clicks. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. I really liked the story from the first nanny. Her name was, or I guess her pseudonym was Nova. And I thought like it was just like such a good interview, like right off the bat. Like it really encompassed like the whole. It was like this Filipino nanny who worked for a Taiwanese fashion designer. And when she first, moved in with the family or like started working for the family, she thought they could relate because they're both Asian, and then very quickly found out that was not true. Because like the family was like basically like the mom victim blamed Michelle Go, like it says here. She asked me if I had heard about an Asian woman who had been pushed in the subway. She said something like, "She's just so stupid. She let that man push her. That's the reason why they should not be using a cell phone while they're in the subway. They should be paying attention." And then the nanny notes, but when when that lady goes out, she uses Uber or Lyft.
Yeah.
So and then like the line, "She's been blinded by what she has," I feel like is just, it's such a good line, like about class and race, like right there. Is just like, you're just so detached from like
not reality, but just
reality, like reality.
Yeah. I wish each profile was about like 5 or so paragraphs, and I'm like, wow, I wish each one had its own full piece.
Yeah. Could easily have been a series. Like I could go on like the Taiwanese mom shat on like the fact that this Filipino person was a nanny, and the Filipino person was like, "Oh, is there something wrong with being a nanny?" And like she just made note of like how this wife doesn't want to talk to other Asian people who don't fit the criteria of how she wants to look like. She wants to meet other rich people, which I think is very interesting.
She said, "I want to bling empire only." Okay.
Right. Representation matters, but only the rich ones.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next piece of news. So we're moving on to the West Coast, I guess the Northwest, in Seattle, Washington. So the title of this article is "The Chinatown International District Pushes Back at an Expanded Homeless Shelter. Officials ask, where else?" Jerry, what was one thought you had on this piece?
So it said that this homeless megaplex, which like great name, I guess, will replace the one run by the Salvation Army. And I'm just like, why not? Why can't you just make the one by the Salvation Army bigger and better?
Yeah. It seems to have more resources for sure. It also looks, it said this hub will have a total of 419 beds, room for RVs and tiny homes, which is a very Seattle thing, I feel like, tiny homes.
Yeah.
And then mental health and addiction treatment.
Okay. I mean, that's good. I think like the article was really interesting, and I think I should have read more than just Next Shark. I forgot to read the Seattle Times article, but I thought the Next Shark article was like, because they talked about how the protesters, they had a quote that they're like not at all against homeless people. It's more about how they weren't consulted about the council's decision. But then like the comments about like, oh, there was a counter protest by unhoused people, which I was like, okay. And then the homeless people telling the protesters to go back to your country, which I was just like,
yeah, what a shit show. No, I mean, I think the point about the lack of outreach is like pretty valid, because like Seattle, it's like they're not only having this expanded homeless shelter, but the city's also trying to build like this new like light rail train track through Chinatown right now.
Oh man!
So it's like two different things that could be displacing people. I mean, the railway obviously a lot more. It's like the Seattle Rail Project if people want to look it up. But yeah, I can definitely understand like people just feeling like, especially when Seattle's like city council and stuff, like they're all white, and it's like, oh, we're not really being consulted on this a lot. And I did talk to one of my friends who lives in Seattle, who is Chinese, and in the Seattle Times article, there's one part where it's like the King County executive was really surprised at the neighborhood's opposition to this shelter expansion. And my friend was like, this is so bullshit. They knew it wasn't going to go over well, so they did the minimum outreach possible to cover their asses, because actual outreach would give more time for people to organize.
Not a surprise there.
Yeah, I'm not. When any city official says we tried our best, we tried our hardest, and we're so surprised, I'm like, y'all didn't do shit. Like, y'all didn't do shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just unfortunate. Like, the people at fault here are the council. I think that's like an important thing to distinguish. And it's just unfortunate that they are. I don't want to say being pitted against each other, but like it kind of feels like that. Like, protesting a homeless shelter when, like, there's a housing crisis. I get why you have to like preface your protest with, or, put out a disclaimer. We're not at all against homeless people. We just don't want this homeless shelter. And then, like, the unhoused people saying, like, go back to your country. Like, it's just, it's,
yeah. But I do think it's, there were some parts of where they were like, yeah, it's true. Like, no one's ever putting shelters in, Belltown or Capitol Hill or any wealthy white neighborhood in Seattle.
Well,
and it's like,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think that's part of the thing, right? It's like, ultimately the thing that will fix everything is just having more housing in general, instead of just trying to put shelters left and right, like, as a temporary thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're also, the Chinatown International District was saying, oh, it's like, yeah, we have a small neighborhood of like 3,000 to 4,000 people. The average medium income is like half what it is the rest of the city. So we're already kind of poor, and we can only accommodate so many people and services. I'm like, that sounds valid to me at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like here. It's like, are there many shelters on like the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side, in the wealthiest places of New York City? Like, I don't think so. At least I don't see any people outside when I go over there.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think about, like, when I walk through, like, Park Slope, or I walk through, where's that? Brooklyn waterfront, like, like a little bit past Park. It was like Park Slope on like steroids. Like, it I felt like I could not, like, afford to breathe there because it just felt so expensive.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet there's no homeless shelters there. Like, yeah, I didn't even see like a single person of color. Like, I didn't even see any East Asian people. Like, that's how like how bad it is. You know what I mean? Like, no Asian people either. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I know not to bring it back to New York, but there is a New York housing crisis, even more so now with like the refugees coming in from Texas and all that. And my last note will be like, New York Mag also interviewed the guy who helped argue for the right to shelter law that we have here in New York City. And he even says, like, no, shelters are not meant to be a solution. It's literally a Band-Aid. Like, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, sounds like something we'll follow up on, as more people in Seattle like organize around 2 projects now that are happening in the city. But
yeah, like, why not use the money? You might not be able to house as many people, but why not use the money to make housing and set up a program to help get I don't. Okay. All right. Well, moving on to our next topic. So this is about Cantonese as the Cantonese language like wanes. There's more efforts to preserve it, see it grow. Aaron, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize that this was an issue. I would say definitely recommend following this Instagram account called Save Cantonese. But I immediately think about how Cantonese is so needed, at least in like New York City, Chinatown. Like, half the time when I'm stopped at like Grand Street or somewhere else by like an elderly Chinese lady, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to help. And then she starts speaking Cantonese and I'm like, oh, fuck me. Okay.
Oh, right. You don't speak Cantonese. Okay. No, that's right.
And they're so different that like I literally cannot do anything, and oftentimes I have to be like, oh, can you speak a little Mandarin? And they're like, yes, I can actually do that and save your ass, and so you can help me. And then they explain it in like, Mandarin, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can help out. But no, I think there's at least like huge portions of Chinatown that still are from these areas like Guangdong and like Fuzhou, who like still speak a lot of Cantonese, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
at least for now, we still need generations to like communicate and help each other out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think when I was reading this article, I thought about like the language classes that you guys have been doing over there, and like the organizers.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like they reminded me of that. I will say that like I am not surprised it's an issue, because like I think it's being, I don't want to say framed as, but like I think it is, as an outsider, I think it's being seen as like this is a stand against mainland China, is like, like us speaking Cantonese is like fuck you Mandarin, like kind of like that.
Yeah. I mean, Cantonese is like Hong Kong's main language.
Exactly. And Taiwan, I think, right?
Yeah,
no. Taiwanese,
I don't
right?
know. Yeah.
But Hong Kong for sure.
Yeah, like Hong Kong for sure. So I can definitely see that. And yeah, like the article does kind of frame it as that. It's like in the US and the UK, they mainly teach Mandarin only, but like in other places, they mainly do Cantonese in like East Asia. Yeah, I don't have like strong feelings about one or the other as languages, just like objectively without the political stuff.
I see.
I would say Cantonese sounds harder because it has 9 different tones as opposed to Mandarin's 4.
Yeah.
So a little more complex on the speaking wise, but I feel like for me, I do want to learn Cantonese just because I see the need for it in Chinatown.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I know, like, I think it's always interesting to see, like, language as, like, a political issue, like, blah, 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 language, words inform the world, blah, blah, blah. But, okay, so, like, in India, for example, in their constitution, they don't have, like, a national language, but it's been a huge issue because the Prime Minister Modi has been, like, pushing to make Hindi the national language. And then I know in the Philippines, in like the 1930s, Tagalog was declared the national language. And then like worse, they like supposedly renamed it as Filipino, which I think
interesting.
It sent like a message to Filipinos who don't speak Tagalog. Like my parents did not know they sucked at Tagalog in the Philippines. Like it was like their Filipino version of like Spanish class here. Like how I took 12 years of Spanish and still don't speak any Spanish. My parents didn't learn Tagalog until they came to America, and they're like, we need to talk to other Filipinos. We better learn Tagalog.
Oh wow, that's
yeah. So yeah, like, when, language is like that, like when you say like, oh, something, this is the main language, it like sends a message to other dialects, it leads to language erasure, that kind of thing.
That is, I 100% agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact breakdowns in terms of like what populations speak what, but yeah, I mean, it's great that like they're having more programs, I think, at Stanford, and then there's other people doing their own initiatives to keep this language alive. Like it's not dead right now. Like it's not like on its last legs right now. It's just like it's like a trend. It's a trend that people are seeing, so they're trying to do more in response, which I think is good. Yeah. Any last thoughts on this piece?
Well, yeah, like I think the mobilization and the organization around like, we got to keep this language, going. We got to learn it. I think that's like something that's super important and interesting, because it's like the speakers understand the weight of learning it. And I see that in juxtaposition, love that word, compared to Asian Americans who are like, I'm such a bad Asian, I can't even speak, like my parents' language. And then they don't do anything about it. They don't bother learning it, like. It's just seeing those two differences. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's just like the Drake meme that we made a while back.
Yeah, but it's just like it's an important thing. I think we don't give it enough credit. Like we don't give learning the parent language enough credit, political credit.
Yeah, I mean, it's because mainly the lack of knowledge is being used so much in like, we joke about diaspora poetry and stuff like that. It's almost like, this is the only thing I have is not knowing, and somehow that's more valuable than knowing it.
Right, like you wouldn't rather rap in English and Canto? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, but definitely check out Save Cantonese. Hopefully one day down the road I will take Cantonese classes, and that'll be my quote political updates for the week. But
yeah, and I'll get started on like Mandarin because I've always wanted to learn. So we'll start with the 4 tones and move up. All right. Well, we hope you enjoy this episode. Again, you can follow the podcast at Politically Asian Podcast on Instagram. at politicasianpod on Twitter, or email us at politicallyasianpodcast@gmail.com. If you really want to help us out, please leave an Apple or Spotify 5-star review. Cool. Thanks for listening, and bye.